Cool. You good? All right, so first thing, the past, but David kind of upped the game on this one, and we've got better audio as well, just because we do consider the level of importance of this topic pretty high. Chris, you grab a chair too if you want to, man. You're good. Sit anywhere you'd like. Come up here if you want. The importance. And so specifically that I want to be able to take this and send it to, just from having very specific conversations of them dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety, or even admittedly being in kind of a depressive state. It seems like at the moment, the COVID response for a lot of us has been to have had a pretty intense impact on our mental health. And so kind of now more than ever, especially in this space, we want to talk about it like it's not weird. And so yes, we are talking about stress primarily, because we all know, you run into somebody and it's, hey, how are you? And if they tell you that they're good, you know for a fact it's probably not true, and they're actually stressed about something. And so trying to identify the difference tonight between living a life that has stressors and living a stressed life. And so that's really what we want to talk about a little bit. So just kind of to start things off, if you guys would think about people you work out with. They don't have to work out here. They don't have to be gym members, but people that are gym members that struggle with stress having a pretty intense impact on their mental health, send this to them. And it's not because I know what I'm talking about necessarily, as much as it's been a very personal process for me. The last 18 months or so have involved a lot of stressors, just like they have for everybody else. And I have kind of very personally ebbed and flowed in and out of poorly responding to those, and then learning how to have a better response to them. And so a lot of this comes from a lot of learned personal experience and going, there's got to be a way to do this better. Because life doesn't seem to get necessarily any easier, and to be able to eliminate stressors completely. And so the only response is to figure out how we manage those better. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're talking through this stuff tonight, as to who, we'll have the link for this and we'll send it out, and you guys share it with gym members and stuff, just because we do really value this to a really high degree. So Nina, will you pass those out? Everybody needs to grab a note card before we jump in. If you need a pen, we've got a few pens there as well. So what we're going to do on this note card is just right now on the front, you can fill up the whole front. We'll use the back later. On the front, you guys just to write in whatever format makes sense to you, write something out that is a significant or primary stressor in your life right now. You can be just one. You can be really explicit or not, whatever you need to write. Whatever you need to write is fine. You can be as vulnerable as you'd like. I'm going to share mine with you as we continue to work our way through this. So we're just writing just something on the front of that that's man, this is one of those things that seems like it's creeping its way in every single day as something that's really stressing me out. So that's how we're going to start the night, on just a really positive note. So it'll be fun. All right, you got 30 seconds to finish that. Okay, so you got that. We will circle back to that at the end, and maybe try to leave with a very, very clear application of how to move forward with a little bit less stress in our life. So obviously hang on to that. Don't use that note card for notes. If you need another note card, grab another one. All right, so before we jump in, a couple of things. I assume that you guys, at least in some way, believe what we say here, or you wouldn't come to a seminar where we are the ones talking. But at the same time, this is a really sensitive topic, and so all of the stuff that I'm presenting to you guys and the data and the information, like it does come from actual validated scholarly sources, and I have those. So if you guys want them, I will give them to you. But I didn't want to like fill this whole board up with that, because all of this information is basically just kind of regurgitated and applied to our specific needs. So one place that I will reference, just because it deserves the credit, is Dr. John Koo. He is, I think, out of, not sure where in Australia, but there is actually a hospital in Australia that has a CrossFit affiliate inside of it. It's the first one ever. And so they practice very, very functional medicine at that hospital. The pillars of health, and so a lot of this information comes out of that, because he made a very strong case for essentially the cyclical or connected nature of stress, mental health, and chronic disease. So that's Dr. John Koo, and you guys can look that up. He's got a great accent and explains all of this way better than I do. So if you want to look that up later, you can. So what we're going to talk about tonight is primarily stress, and the fact that first and foremost, stress is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so like everything else, in the appropriate amount of dosage, stress can actually be a very, very positive stimulant in our life. You guys know that on a very practical level by how you come in here and work out, because stress essentially is equivalent to intensity. So if you have no stress, there is no required adaptation, which means there is no actual growth that occurs. So it's like what you used to do for working out versus what you do now, which is come in and put your body through an appropriate amount of stress in these workouts, because stress is where growth happens. So there is, however, a sweet spot for that we want to talk about and find, is how to live in this like healthy stress zone, or this healthy stimulant zone of stress. So this is called the Urex Dodson Law. And this line runs and measures your performance. So essentially, like your growth, your optimization, your performance. You guys can connect this mentally to just working out in the gym if you want. That's really the easiest parallel to draw. But really, in all of life, this is like your performance level in life, whereas this is the stimulation level. So this represents the stress stimulants. So the things in your life that cause you to actually experience stress or pressure. There's a number of different words that we can use to describe that. So your performance and the stimulant level of stress that you experience in life run parallel with one another. As the stimulation of stress increases, so does our ability to perform, to optimize, to grow. So we reach this pinnacle point on this arc here where we're hitting optimal performance. And in optimal performance, we experience what we like to talk about a lot here, continue to talk about more, which is this word, vitality. So this is like optimal performance. We are in the healthy stress zone, and we're experiencing vitality. We're experiencing efficacy, which means basically like everything you do in life has of like mattering to doing anything to do it. It matters. And then lastly, you're experiencing like living into a sense of purpose or a sense of passion in a lot of ways. And so the definitive nature of vitality is the state of being strong, the state of being active. So that's like physical vitality. Another word is just energy. So this idea of like not being lethargic, but instead you have energy. And then this one is really, really cool, is vitality is the power giving continuance of life and growth. So if you are a person, it means that you're a person that internally has this thing in you that's constantly life-giving and constantly growing, but also is being shared with what's around you. So as a gym, we talk about being more than a gym. We've got a lot of phrases that we lean into, but this concept of vitality is the concept of, are you living a life that if you stepped away from it, things that are growing would stop growing because you are the one actually instilling growth into them. And so that's what we talk about with vitality. And this healthy level of stress is what helps us get to that primary like pinnacle point of vitality in life, of living life like it matters. With no stress, because you've got like your, whatever, hippies, I suppose, I don't know, that like going like no stress. We all know those people. We also know that people just don't care, right? So it's living life with absolutely no sense of ambition, or things get a little bit uncomfortable, just back away from them because they're uncomfortable with stress. And then we live at this range of not being stimulated enough by pressure or by challenges. And so we're lethargic. We have feelings of uselessness, even though maybe we convince ourselves we don't. or we just are just like wildly unfulfilled in what we do in life. And so that's what we experience whenever we have zero pressure or zero stress. I'm not going to do that because of what that compels or what that requires out of me. And so we're just basically bored and tired. So the other end of that spectrum, and what we experience there whenever we're just absolutely stressed out and restless, this is the point of chronic stress, meaning it never goes away, or like a very, very high stress event that happens to us. So it's very intense or it's chronic, ongoing. There we have feelings of being wildly overwhelmed. The word that we kind of used in comparison to efficacy and uselessness. So here we're useless. We feel like we're not doing anything that matters. Here at our optimal performance, we're firing on all cylinders. We feel like what we do in the day actually matters. And then here, what we feel is like bitterness. We feel used, we feel taken advantage of, we're mad at the people who aren't really like doing as much as us. We feel like the people around us are just utilizing us as like tools or whatever, taking complete and total advantage of us because we get really, really overwhelmed and really blown out, and so now we are just bitter. And then the phrase that we all like to use, which is like a primary killer, is burnout. Like we all feel burnout. And so people quit jobs most of the time because they get burnt out, not because they're actually supposed to quit jobs. Beyond jobs, people leave way more important things than jobs because they get burnt out oftentimes. So that's kind of a really like big intro to why this matters and why we want to talk about it, because this as a gym is our goal. Like we do it through burpees and we do it through pull-ups, we do it through deadlifts, but really what we're trying to do is promote and accomplish actual life vitality. Our job in the gym is to help you guys get to that point through some physical means, but we want to make sure we're doing a good job, which is why we do things like this, with presenting the opportunity to dial that in mentally as well and to address actual issues. So the truth is, stress is present in every front of our lives, but it's not necessarily the stress that's the problem. It's our approach to or response to the stress. Stress is literally like the most ongoing or like the most long-standing and ongoing endemic that we face as a society, not necessarily speaking to anything outside of just like the cultural United States, westernized cultural society. But here for us, mental health disorders, primarily caused by stress, make up for 25% of avoidable chronic diseases or metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome would be essentially having like high blood pressure or like hypertension, like so you're on the verge of a heart attack, just some of those factors that are like known as comorbidities, things that kill us that don't have to. So stress leading to mental health and specifically anxiety and depressive disorder make up for a quarter of what's killing us. In fact, this is a weird thing to promote as a gym, but living with this level here of stress is actually worse for your general well-being than not working out is. Now, bring it all together, working out is a way not to get here, so don't quit the gym, but is that stress is really like the endemic that is driving us to not just a life of not being vital and not living fulfilled, but it is what is actually killing us. Mental health, or the lack of mental health, is the ongoing endemic because nothing disables human beings like a mental health disorder. And stress is what quickly turns into some sort of mental health disorder. Primarily what we can think of is anxiety or like massive depressive disorder. So as previously stated, healthy stress increases performance. It helps us adapt, it helps us grow, and it helps us optimize ourselves as human beings. So really quickly, let's talk about the negative stress response. And so this is just kind of the identifying uncomfortable part of this conversation, because the point is the natural response to stress is really nothing more than like a chemical or a hormonal one of cortisol, like the cortisol hormone, or adrenaline. just surging into your body. And those things are great in short term. You guys experience those even like in the gym. Like they're performance enhancers to an extent, but whenever they stay for too long, instead of being something that is a proper or a healthy stimulant, it turns into something that's toxic for your body. Operating at this high level of increased like cortisol, or having this running through your system all of the time becomes toxic for your well-being. And it's just generally debilitating to like your sense of stability or homeostasis as a human being. And it does start neurologically, right? Like a stress event occurs, and for the most part, it's a neurological response. We think about it first. We experience something mentally or emotionally regarding that, and it starts in our head. But what starts in our head quickly and really immediately begins to affect us in our bodies. So what begins in the head really impacts the body even more than the head does. So mental health becomes a physiological or a body issue too. So you can't have, like this is the whole statement for this, there is no such thing as physical health without mental health, because they aren't just interconnected, they're entirely controlled really by one another. And the argument actually is like, no, you guys can't out-train a bad diet. We've had nutrition seminars and we've talked about that, but you can't out-train stress, and you can't out-train depression, you can't out-train anxiety. They're tools against those things, but it's a tool to be used. It can't defeat it on its own. And so it is thinking aspect, this neurological response to stress that we've got to dial in first before our actual practical physical action against stress and anxiety is going to have any sort of impact. And so what starts in the head moves to the body. So a negative stress response is the argument we want to make tonight, is what we need to get rid of. Because if we were to ask you guys, if we were to start a 30-minute clock and it was like, all right, wrap of all of the things that stress you out, we've all got enough, right? And we all, regardless of how empathetic or compassionate we believe ourselves to be, we all worse than the person sitting next to you. And that's like okay to an extent. And we all have reasons to believe that in a lot of ways, because you just don't get it. You don't get what I have to go through on a daily basis. You don't get why it's hard for me to get in the gym, or why it's hard for me to make this decision, or why it's hard for me to make that decision. And we all genuinely thing is the worst thing. And so while that may be manageable to an extent, there are probably a lot of things we can and a lot of things we can get rid of, not all going away. Like life is just not easy. Life is not simple. And also we don't want it to be, because then we're just bored and tired and we might as well be dead anyways. So we want to have healthy obstacles. We want to have healthy stress. So the argument is not, how do we get rid of everything that stresses you out so you can perfect like utopian environment where it's just easy. That's not what we want. You guys do CrossFit. You know it's not what you want. And so it is about getting better. So it's not about managing necessarily the number of stressors or getting rid of all of them. Tonight is about addressing our response to stress, because that immediate neurological response is what's going to lead to the physical outcomes anyways. So let's talk about why this matters so much. Negative stress responses just cultivate more stress, right? So stress event, negative response, more stress is kind of how it works. So a complex process, but stress and response, this is the cycle or the spiral we find ourselves in. Stress event happens, whatever that may be, whatever you wrote on your card, right? And then our poor response. So our negative stress response happens, and then the outcome of our response happens, which is also negative because we've done something negative in response to stress, and now we have a new stress event. So we are literally just sending invitations to ourselves and accepting them for more and more stress as we continue this cyclical pattern of stress event, negative response, new. If we can break this cycle down and stop this spiral at any point, it's going to be right here. So instead of poor response, good response. And so now we've killed that cycle before it's even begun, because this you actually can't control. Like, you're going to find yourselves in stress events, in stress environments. So this is your first best step or your first best line of defense against this cycle. Stress equals mental health, which equals disease. So poor stress response equals poor mental health, which results in some sort of probably metabolic syndrome, avoidable chronic disease that is debilitating to your well-being. So think about it this way. Stress event, you lose your job, you get more stressed out. And you have a negative response, so you isolate yourself from other people, you sleep poorly, you don't want to work yourself, you start eating poorly, or work. You find a supplement that makes you feel better in some capacity and you abuse it. And so now, event has happened, you've had a pretty poor response to that stress event, which is going to have very, very negative physiological impacts on your body. And so we gain weight, we stop working out, we stop sleeping well, we start eating really poorly, and we start drinking tons of alcohol. Now, we're headed towards obesity. And so literally, stress event, poor response to that stress event equals negative mental health because now we're anxious or we're depressed, and then we're gaining weight, developing some sort of factor or all of the factors of metabolic syndrome. So stress and its response equivalates mental health, which equivalates avoidable chronic disease, which is basically the argument for this whole thing, and what we want to fight against. In this spiral, stress becomes disease. People with high stress in their lives, so this is one of the, just some of the data, people with high stress in their lives are 50% more likely to develop one or more, and most of the time, all of the factors of metabolic syndrome. And that is increased if it's occupational stress. So if you live with high stress, you're already 50% more, essentially. But if you live with high stress that comes from your occupation, it's even more. And so we are living in this cycle where that is what is created. Physiological impacts. So this is a good argument for Jim. I want to live with high stress because it completely eliminates the hard work you guys are putting in here whenever you come in here. Because two things happen to your body whenever you live in that high stress zone all of the time. And this is pretty interesting. The first thing that happens is it mitigates or it lessens the efficiency of your skeletal muscle. So like the muscle that's on your bones, your bicep, your triceps, your quads, your glutes, your abs, all of those things, it makes them less effective. Like it creates a neurological divide between your mind's abilities. So you're literally using muscles less, so it's therefore not growing them. So your skeletal muscle will actually decrease whenever you live with high stress. You won't be as lean muscle, which is what we all want. Second thing that happens is, statistically, levels of stress in an individual are directly connected to denser levels of body fat. But what's even more interesting is this body fat is more present in people who live with high stress. So this massive amount of, which is what happens when we get sick, everything gets inflamed. So our bodies are filled with all this inflammation, our bodies are filled with all these hormones all of the time. So not only are we losing skeletal muscle and we're gaining fat that we wouldn't otherwise gain because it's not because of poor nutritional choices or lack of exercise, we're just like inflamed. And it's poisonous and it's toxic to our bodies. But what's interesting, even more than this fat showing up due to high stress, the kind of fat that shows up is known as like lipotoxicity. So like it's referred to as sick fat. So it is literally different kinds of fat. Like the fat that operates in a high stress person is the same type of fat that affects the individuals who are morbidly obese. So if you are not morbidly obese and you live with high stress, the fat that you find in your body is operating in a debilitating way, the same way as if you were wildly overweight. So you're developing metabolic syndromes even though you're not obese, as if you're obese, you're living with high stress. Because even the fat, like it's crazy, even the fat inside your body is stressed. And stressed fat is worse. And if that's true for fat, then it's got to be true for everything else. When you're fat stressed out, it's even worse for you than just regular fat. Like it's levels of bad fat. And so that should be enough information for us to go like, okay, if my life is so up here at high stress all the time that even my fat is freaking out and poisoning my body, then I need to fix something. So you guys want to be lean, you guys want to lose fat, to manage our stress differently and manage our stress better. So that is kind of the case for I lost my place. That is kind of the case for. So what we've identified is we've all got stressors. It's kind of unavoidable. There's not a lot that we can do about it, and we need to manage it. Okay, so let's talk about stress management then. Like, this is the actionable part. We know it's bad. There's not a lot we can do about it. It is kind of the ongoing endemic. So what do we do? So this is the thing that sounds unkind, and I don't mean it to be unkind, and I say it to myself all the time first, and maybe it is meant to be unkind to myself, but I don't mean this to be rude, but the very first step in stress management, own your responsibility in it. And so for the most part, in order to have a positive stress response, we have to take personal responsibility for the fact that many of our stressors are our choice. They're our own doing in most ways. Like, not a victim to a circumstance that's stressing you. Follow the thread back to its origin. You kind of did it yourself. That's not true for everybody. People have very, very hard lives that they did not invite anything into. But it's a pretty strong argument to make that most of the stressors that we have in our life are really your decision. It's something you have invited into your life, and it's something you have decided to do. And culturally, we absolutely love to offer that we are a victim to the circumstances we face every day. We victimize ourselves all the time. So of course, we have negative stress responses because you feel like everything and everybody is out to get you all of the time, which may be true, but it's only really you. You are mostly just out to get yourself and setting yourself up for failure. So we cannot act like all the circumstances around us, if they would just work themselves out, we would be stable. We cannot fall into this trap that there is this one thing in our life that if we could sort this one thing out, we would be stable and healthy, and we know. We would become this immediately like thriving individual. One thing would get worked out. As that one thing gets worked out, another one thing is just going to the one thing that needs to get worked out. So when we talk about stress and the efficacy of it in our life, stress is going to keep coming. Negativity is going to keep coming. Even if you do everything perfectly, stressors are going to hit. Terrible things happen that are out of our control all of the time, and we have to deal with them consistently. There is not a one thing that you are going to fix that is going to lead you to that pinnacle of vitality unless that one thing that you're trying to fix is yourself. It is entirely about taking responsibility over your own thinking. There is not another person in the entire world that is responsible for your mental health other than you. Yes, there are environments that are unhealthy, and if those environments involve people that have no intention of getting healthier, it is healthy to remove yourself from those things. But for the people and health, love to complain about them all the time. And so complaining is where we start with stress management. Stop complaining. That's kind of the first step. Small things like stress, massive decision in our lives. Stress is going to go away when we stop tolerating the negative and we stop thinking so much about what we need to do and we just start doing it. So, practical. This is what we like the most about this. So as a gym, we're not trying to just make you guys look good naked. We do like to talk about that because why not do that? That's great. So our FX track, our fitness track, look good naked, cool. Self-esteem, self-confidence, all of that is great. But we're not just trying to make you look better or even be fitter. We're trying to lean into this concept and this idea of vitality. We comes into and walks out of the and growing whatever environments they go into more than anybody else around them. So when you leave the gym and you go to work for the day, at work, our hope is that what we've done in the gym outside of even what happens whenever you, living into vitality, interact with people who are living into anxiety. You might be the person that brings them out of that. You might be the person that actually acts as that source of power and growth that helps people change their lives. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, and we want to continue to lean into that. Like, it's not just about losing weight and looking better and moving faster and like having more fun. All those things are a part of it, but it's genuinely about like optimizing human beings. That's what we're trying to do in here. The way we think that happens is through 5 different ways. Those are our 5 factors of health: eat, sleep, train, think, and connect. We think everything can kind of be summed up in all 5 of those factors when it comes to addressing the physiological or mental aspects of a human being. So, practical points to manage stress response. Stress is here, it's not going away, it can actually be a good thing. A response, now how do we response? So, diet. We've had seminars about each one of these things, so we're not going to dig heavy into them, and we have ways for you guys to have continued conversations about this. So we'll talk about them in depth if you guys want to, but we're just going to hit very specific ones tonight. So eating. Anti-inflammatory diets, most helpful ones to mitigate stress, because is inflammation. Your body gets inflamed, so don't inflammation. And now we're just inflamed. So anti-inflammatory diets are the goal for directly addressing depression, anxiety, mental health disorders. Those are the more helpful things because are connected, so it will help you to make better physical choices. You can't just decide bad food is good for you. So eat an anti-inflammatory diet, and if you guys want to have a conversation about what that means, we can do that, just not right now. Sleep. So we did a whole seminar on sleep 2 months ago, and we those bullet points of how to sleep well, just super practical ways to manage your sleep. But tonight, the takeaway is make mood elevating sleep choices. And that would really be a good advice regardless of what you're making decisions about. Make decisions that elevate your mood. But what this really means is a mood elevating sleep choice is go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Because now you've gone to bed. Anxiety of, oh my God, I've stayed up too late. And now you're not waking up later going, oh my God, now I have to do just as much today with up late. Or I have to be up late, I'm going to be late to work. On the back foot, I'm starting my day with literal anxiety because I'm going to be late to work. So make mood elevating sleep decisions. Earlier, you wake up earlier, you go to bed later and you wake up later. Because you slept through your alarm. So mood elevating sleep choices is the goal. Training. So even though stress is the training is directly connected to against stress. So statistic is that poor cardiorespiratory fitness cardiorespiratory conditioning is associated with increased risk, and depression is but there are where coming into the gym and working on your is what we do every single day against that 2/3 risk of becoming depressed. So fitness isn't even it's a good heart health. Fitness, training, exercise provides hormones. It just balances out and regulates all those hormones that you've got going on in your body. I feel like if we've been doing this long enough, we all like to be in a feel better after we train. It's because we're regulating those hormones. Because sometimes what starts in the head comes to the body, and we have to regulate it in our body. Your response to stressors, not actually a negative person. And so you come in to the gym and you regulate those hormones and you balance them out. So very, very helpful tactic for that. Of course, like coming in and exercising, if you deal with a mental health disorder, like a sense of self yourself is going to help that. And that's what happens when you come in and you exercise, because here we don't compare ourselves to each other. Here, just making yourself better. And so out and being proud of yourself is a really, really good way to combat depression and combat anxiety. So when we train, we do that with that in mind. It's not just like, oh, I need to go exercise. There's a lot that you're accomplishing when you come in here and you work out. And that's really what matters to us. Think, so this isn't just like read books and listen to podcasts. Think means like mental hygiene, like clean up the way that you think, which also means clean up the way that you talk about the things that you think about. So we have to fix it in our brains, and sometimes we fix it letting it come out of our mouths. And we've talked about that a lot here, like with coaches and with of just this idea of like we got to stop being negative, or we got to stop complaining, because what we don't think is a big deal in the moment is continuing to cultivate this like sense of negativity, where what we may find whenever we like it's 80% negative and only 20% positive. So of course we feel anxious, or of course we feel depressed. So don't let it come out of your mouth. So with mental hygiene, we want to manage our emotions, because feelings and facts are different things. They don't feel like different things a lot of times, but facts and feelings are different things. So it's really important that when you have a feeling, you measure it against fact. And sometimes facts are hard to know, especially now, because it seems like everybody is just lying to everybody all the time, like at the highest level. Trusted community and trusted relationships, like you just have to assume the best. You have to assume the best about the people you're in relationship with, and you also have to live people assuming the best. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to try. Like you just have to actually care enough about the people around you where you are worth trusting, because you're perfect, because you care about yourself and those people enough to just try to be that. So we assume the best about each other, and we manage those emotions. We measure fact and feeling, and we look to facts to dictate feelings, not the other way around. Perception, another way, or mental hygiene. So how do you perceive things? What's your perspective whenever something happens? A stress event happens, what's your immediate response? That's highly dictated by the way that you perceive it and the way that you speak about it. So good example is, how do you like talk to yourself about things that happen? So you guys, nobody cares, work harder. It's like on t-shirts and people say it like, nobody cares, work harder. Nobody cares, work harder. It's like stuff time, like our self-talk. Like your experience about something and your immediate response is, shut up, nobody cares, work harder, which is like the worst thing that you can say to yourself. Like, it is such a stupid phrase, and it should never come out of your mouth, and it should never in your brain and for you to convince yourself of that. It is a poisonous phrase. So when something hard happens, instead of saying, shut up, dude, nobody cares, work harder, because it's not true. By me saying nobody cares, it completely eliminates the care that people actually have towards me, and it creates a sense of isolation and the sense of negativity. Don't say that. Instead of nobody cares, work harder, what I'm going to say to myself is, hey, like, pressure is a privilege, because I want to be at that pinnacle point of vitality in my life, so I like this stress. This stress is good. People do care, so shut up, stop being an idiot. Don't say nobody cares, work harder to yourself and fix it if it's broken. Perceptions. A part of that is opportunities to get better, opportunities to optimize. Rest, which is unstimulated. You guys, rest is not in the gym. This is great. We want it to be the best hour of your all the time, but this is not rest, because rest is actually like an unstimulated time. So we find an opportunity to be unstimulated, which oftentimes is our decision. Because you can sit in a chair and read a book and be stimulated because you're being rude to yourself. You can sit in a chair and you can read a book. And then last thing, the effective combatant against a negative stress response is to express gratitude. Don't just lightly come up with things that are somewhat positive. Write them down and say them out loud. Express the things that you are grateful for in life, which a lot of times the things that are causing the most stress are things you decided to go after to you. And of course they're the hardest things, because the things that are worth it are always the hardest things. So when you find yourself being grateful for the same things that are causing you stress. So that's just a really healthy practice. And then the last one, connect. So this is about relationships, community, interpersonal relationship, actually connecting with people. So it is a normal gym and not connect, but it's still possible to do it. Is both in the gym and out of the gym, have genuine, authentic connections with people, whatever that means. So another statistic is if you were to put somebody in, do a brain scan of somebody, and have that person who and this person deals with chronic depression or maybe major depressive disorder, and you've got them on a brain antidepressant. Certain parts of their brain are going to light up when they take that antidepressant because that's what it's combating. However, whenever that same person has something parts light up, relationships with people that are authentic, that you live into and lean into, are genuinely an antidepressant. So when you are depressed, you lean into the people that you deeply care about. And it's even a scientifically proven, can't say that, those are redundant, yeah, those don't work together. Not proven, but a scientifically discovered reality is that if you were to scan your brain and somebody you love walks in the room, it's the most effective way to combat depressive disorder than taking any amount of pills. Our interpersonal need to connect to people and to experience community and to experience relationship is the best medicine that we have for feeling isolated, alone, and depressed. And so we lean into this idea of connection, not just because it's more fun to do stuff with people, but because it is a primary thing that keeps you healthy. It is a primary thing that keeps you living a life of vitality. So those are our practical things. So again, kind of the summation of this is stress can be a good thing. Stress is not going away at all. Stressors will be present in your life. So to make those stressors the good kind of stress, it's totally your responsibility, which is so not what we want to hear. But it's also what we talk about with fitness, right? It's not catch-22. You want to get fit? Come to the gym 5 days a week. Stop eating garbage and enjoy it. Think positively about it. And so it's the same thing with managing our stress and leaning into that life of vitality. It's your responsibility. It's your choice and it's your decision. Stress happens, manage it better, grow. That's the opportunity that you have to break the cycle of stress happens, you respond poorly, more stress happens, and now you're a worse otherwise. So in order to find a life of purpose and to be passionate about what we do, it's really about our response and our reaction to stress, not stress itself. So the card you have, on the back of it, the way that we'll finish is you guys wrote out on the front of that, you wrote out you out, right? And it can be a big deal, maybe not a big deal, maybe you didn't want to be super vulnerable and you made something up. Either way, on the front of the card you wrote not in a negative form. So if you wrote, I am experiencing of this script this thing is an opportunity for me to do this. So I'll just give you an example real quick. So, because right now we're dealing with like a major overhaul with the other business that we have in town with the cafe and the restaurant. And it's a huge practical. And there are a lot of practical things that we're having. So what I can say to myself is, I'm so tired, I don't have time to do what I want to do, which I have said that to myself. But instead of that, I'm going to say, this is an opportunity to take what we have and to make it better. Because we've always known it needs to get a little bit better. So this is our greatest opportunity. This is our greatest opportunity to make it better. So instead of stressor, this is an opportunity. The third thing you're going to write on that card is one thing you can do. Just pick one of them and one action that you can do to help manage that. So for me to manage that stressor in my life isn't even really connected to that. The best way for me to manage that stressor in my life and to turn it on its head and use it as an opportunity is to wake up earlier. Because if I wake up earlier than I want to, so instead of waking up at 5:45, because now I have more hours in the day to either train and work out. That's a stressful process for me, is my personal, like, so of course that's going to make, so my better stress response is to tell myself a different story, but it's also to implement a practical thing that says, dude, just get up earlier and now you got more hours in the day to accomplish this current excessive load of work that you have on your hands. So that's, turn it into an opportunity, and then pick one thing from our 5 factors of health that you can like move towards that goal. It's an awkward dead spot in the video, I guess. Brought to you by Pursue and Benchmark Physical Therapy. Sponsored by Rogue. Probably. Oh, that was a mistake. Dang. Next time. Okay, so in the spirit of community, does anybody want to share what they wrote down? Kayla's sharing hers.
So I was going to go for specific people in my life, but I thought that was a little too targeted. So I just said negative mindsets.
Yeah.
People that have negative mindsets.
Okay.
So my typical response to that is, oh my gosh, I don't know when you're at home.
Yeah.
That's my typical, just want to get past that moment.
Yeah.
And just move on. So kind of to combat that, it's an opportunity for me to shine positivity on the circumstance. That person could be complaining or coming to me with a problem or whatever their negativity may be, but it's a way that I can turn the circumstance around and maybe let them see a different side of things. So my management piece would be the thing. So assume the best instead of the worst. Take care about those people and change that perception.
Yeah, so basically doing for them what you're doing right now. Like flipping the script for them, because most of the time it is harder to do it for ourselves. So like having those trusted people or just those healthy confrontational people in our lives that are like, hey, stop. So, yeah. Anybody else? Chris.
I put being the sole as my stressor, as it's pretty taxing. It wears me out. And on the other side, I put the parenting without interference, but
Yeah, so like anything else, I mean, it's awesome to have good ideas. So there are times that it feels like all I have is ideas because I don't actually follow through with implementing them. And so it's like I can identify this thing in my life that needs to be and then find a really great solution to it. And I feel like finding the solution to it is the answer rather than implementing the things that achieve the change. And so it is just kind of this concept of like, okay, if we have the tools, give yourself a chance and actually use them. Most of the time, we find that it's not necessarily the circumstances that we are in that need to change as much as our perception and response to those circumstances. And honestly, there's no way for you to find that out unless you try. And so you can't find out if the job that you're in is the wrong job unless you actually try to optimize who you are in the midst of it. Because again, if the problem is you're the one going to the new job too. And so you may create the same problems at the new space that you had at the old space because the issue is us and not our actual stimulant or our actual environment anyways. It really is like kind of a charge and an encouragement to take responsibility for our total health, not just our physical health, because you guys have taken responsibility for that by coming into the gym and doing what you're doing. So it's really stress management and mental health and combating the chronic disease that we can avoid by taking that same level of responsibility across the other health domains in our life. So again, I've got like resources and stuff that I can share with you guys. I'm even happy to send you the video to that from Dr. John Koo. If you guys want to listen to that, he provided way more data. If you guys want to watch that, but otherwise, that's it, unless you have questions or you want to talk further about anything. If you guys have practical questions, I guess we can do that now. Not sure what those would be.